The world is full of uncertainties. Your data storage shouldn't be one of them. Meet the new NetApp All-Flash SAN Array, a simple solution for all your business-critical applications. The ASA delivers dedicated block storage with superior performance, data availability, and guaranteed efficiency, as well as integrated data protection. How good is it? We guarantee availability for not 4, not 5, but 6 nines. Yeah, you heard that right. Our all-flash SAN array delivers 99.9999% uptime. Worried about cybercrime? Don't be. With our new ransomware recovery guarantee for primary storage, backed by tamper-proof snapshots, you'll be able to recover your snapshot data in the event of a ransomware attack. NetApp guarantees operational simplicity, built-in security to manage and recover from ransomware threats, and efficiencies to meet or exceed your sustainability and savings goals. Get your data storage ready for the modern world. NetApp.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to NetApp On Air. As always, I am your host, Nick Howell. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have got an exciting show prepped and planned for you today, and we're very excited to go over this brand new announcement that we're just now getting around to having a conversation about. Apologies for being a few weeks late on it, but we definitely wanted to get here. First and foremost, we are T-minus 1 month away from the first Insight back in Vegas in 4 years. Very, very excited to be back here at the MGM Grand. I say here as if I live here now. But yes, very excited to have everyone back to my new home here in Las Vegas. Not my house, but the MGM Grand. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, insight.netapp.com. Head over there, get registered, check out the agenda. The schedule builder is live. The speakers and sponsors and all of that stuff are up there and ready to go. We are 1 month away, folks, from Insight. So make sure you're getting your registrations in. Make sure you're making your travel plans to come spend a couple of days here in Vegas with us and hear all about the latest products, announcements, big keynotes, big customers, all of that kind of stuff. You can do hands-on labs, free certifications. If you're on site here, absolutely take advantage of all of that stuff. All you got to do is head over to insight.netapp.com and get registered. Also, make sure you come and join our Discord community. Absolutely, please make sure you come and join us in Discord. That is the NetApp community. For the other 362 days of the year that we're not doing Insight, we hang out in our Discord community. Yes, that's right. Thousands of end users, customers, partners, and our own support staff, executives, and other personnel are in there to answer any questions you might have conversations, help you fix any problems, whether you're working with Ansible and Terraform or whether you're working with some of our on-prem kit or some of our cloud storage solutions. And speaking of cloud storage, that's what we're going to be talking about today. You can head over to netappdiscord.com to get joined up on our Discord community. We're going to be doing some special stuff at Insight, so if you're coming, make sure you keep an eye out in the expo for the community lounge because there will be some activities going on there. Come meet up with some of your peers. Come meet Drew and myself. Anything you'd like to do there, you can come check out the community lounge when you're at Insight. But first, you got to register. You got to get there. And you got to get into the Discord community. I believe that's all the housekeeping I wanted to get to today. So without further ado, I wanted to get into the topic. A few weeks ago, there was an announcement made. There was something that really was a massive milestone for NetApp. And I wore my OG Google Cloud Volumes service shirt today from 2018 when we were originally setting up and launching the Cloud Volumes service in Google Cloud. We already had it in AWS, and we were working on bringing to market the Azure NetApp File solution in Azure. We have now hit a milestone today with the announcement and the guest and the content that we're going to talk about today, where we now have first-party storage solutions in all three major cloud providers for you to tie in and integrate natively with your workloads in the cloud. Like if there's a mic drop moment that we've had over the last 5 to 6 years, I feel like we've gotten to that milestone now. And that's why it means so much to me, because I've been on this kind of journey with the cloud side of the world since the beginning, since when we started doing this. And it's been a really fun journey to go on. And today is sort of the ribbon, the bow that gets tied on this. And it doesn't mean we're stopping and we're done, but it's a really big milestone that I really want people to take to heart, because now we've got it in all three. The same level of service, the same level of integration, same level of stuff like that. So I thought, who better to bring on for that than one of the biggest evangelists that we have for Google Cloud, and that is Mr. Geoffrey Tudor. So Jeff, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited. I can't tell if you can tell if I'm excited or not about having this conversation, because I feel like it's something that's been building up for 4 to 5 years now to get to this point. So tell everybody who you are and why Nick Howell had you on the show today.
Well, thanks, Nick, so much. It's really great to be here. I love all of the content that you're able to put together and get to the audience. So we're very excited about this announcement. And just for a little bit of background, I'm Geoff Tudor. I lead the Hyperscaler Solutions go-to-market. Basically, that means saying, yes, we got great file systems here at NetApp, but in the cloud, how do we integrate them along the workloads and align with the industry solutions? So, with Google, for instance, we built Google NetApp products into things like healthcare AI with the Vertex. Things such as automotive for lifecycle product management in the building of the new electric automotive cars and things like that. So it's just taking the pieces and then actually aligning them into where they fit in with transforming an industry and transforming across multiple solutions such as VMware, et cetera. But I've been in the cloud storage space for since 2017, almost since or 2007, when AWS first launched its S3. And ever since then, I've been applying both the startup waters and the large company waters. But in the file system space, that really started with a journey about 6 years ago, and then coming into NetApp, helping build out the partnership with Google Cloud. That was only about 5 years old now.
Yeah, it's incredible how young it is and how much we've achieved in that much time working with them. And it's been a big deal for me to kind of watch that grow. I don't want to say from the bleachers, but definitely from the sidelines, because I wasn't directly involved in the stuff, like deep in the trenches of the engineers, but I was one of those that I had to go out there and and sell it and make it a part of how we went to market and things like that. So I definitely was paying attention, very focused on, what was going on. And you see these different tractions being taken from different places. And it's very exciting to see it come to fruition just in the last month with the announcements at Google Cloud Next, I think is what they call it now. They used to call it ONAIR, Cloud ONAIR. I think that was the pandemic name. But how do let's rewind the clocks and give people a little bit of a history lesson if we can. How did we get to the relationship with Google Cloud to where we were winning Partner of the Year awards year after year? Sure. For some of the work that we were doing with Cloud Volumes Service? And I'd love to get to a point somewhere in the conversation of how we went from that to where we are today with the recent announcements.
Yeah, sure. So if you rewind the clock, about 5 years is when we started the journey with Google. So in the marketplace, there's a lot of partners and ISVs that have solutions inside of the Google Cloud marketplace. You can go into Google Cloud, search the marketplace for anything from AI solutions to other types of analytic solutions, et cetera. Well, we launched our Cloud Volumes ONTAP into that marketplace. That was about 2018. And we started having customers and saying, I want to take advantage of ONTAP inside of Google Cloud, and Cloud Volumes ONTAP gives you this ability to basically create your own dedicated virtual NetApp filer inside of your Google project and connect it to your on-prem filer. And then you can do things like snap, mirror, and replicate data. You can cache data from on-prem in the cloud, work with it on cloud, you do some analytics in the cloud, and automatically gets synchronized back to your on-prem filer. So that was some early use cases. But Google...
frankly, that's something we've been doing for about a decade.
Right, exactly.
Cloud Volumes ONTAP is the evolution of what we used to call ONTAP Cloud or Cloud ONTAP or stuff that we've been doing. Like I was setting that up in 2012, tinkering with it in AWS. That's something that had been around forever. And at a certain point, we would put that in the SDS, software defined storage kind of category, right? Of just a virtualized storage system in that context. Yeah, that was, we didn't start doing that in Google Cloud until
Google Cloud did
2018.
2018, but you
Interesting.
bring up
Okay.
a very, very important point and something that I was not even familiar with until I joined NetApp, and it really speaks to how far ahead NetApp is of the curve of the other OEMs out there, and that's the fact that we took that ONTAP operating system, right, our storage OS, and as you said, we virtualized it and made it so that it could run in the cloud. And that was like in 2013 we did that proof of concept. And
Yeah.
since that time, it's been optimizing it. And as you go into each different hyperscaler, you have to rewrite the connectivity to things like the SSD abstracted layer, whether it's EBS in Amazon or persistent disk in Google, or blob storage, whatever you're connecting into. And then you have different connectors for object storage.
Right.
So at a very high level in the cloud, everyone has object storage, they have block storage, and they have file storage, but they're all different in how you communicate. So we took CVO and we made it a normalized platform across all of them. So now once you get it up and going, a CVO in each different hyperscaler, you can speak to it just like any other ONTAP filer, and we abstract away all of the difficulties that otherwise you would have to go to create your own file system. And that was that first step, right?
And it kind of gave you to add the other cog in there. And I know we're talking about cloud stuff, but It's not to be lost that I tried to start up a mantra about 5 years ago called ONTAP Everywhere. And it really tied into that data fabric message that we were pushing. But the idea is exactly what you just said. If we normalize across different platforms isn't the right word, different destinations with ONTAP, it gives a like-for-like experience. You can use all the integrations regardless of who the provider is, and it integrates natively with your on-prem stuff as well. So in the event that you do need on-prem and all three cloud providers, like there was that sort of universal solution that ONTAP is ONTAP is ONTAP, regardless of where you or your workloads were at.
Yeah, and it still is it's used very widely today by customers that want to create that hybrid and multi-cloud experience. However, if you move into the hyperscalers, what they like is a fully managed service, right? You go to the cloud because now you click a button and then you're just getting an SLA, and the hyperscaler is doing all the hard work behind the scenes, doing any type of data movement. If you have a failed disk, they do the high availability. They maintain the upgrades behind to make it transparent to you. And so Google and NetApp started talking about, okay, well, CVO is great as a self-managed, virtual machine inside of a customer's project, but how about a fully managed service? And that's where we started in 2019 to integrate with something called Cloud Volumes Service. Now, Cloud Volumes Service, instead of being a virtual machine that a customer runs in their own project, this is literally volumes as a service. And we built a control plane that worked directly interfaced into the Google Cloud Console. Under the partner solutions down there. They had 5 of them. One of them was NetApp Cloud Volumes Service. So if you were a Google Cloud Console user, you would say, hey, I need a 50 terabyte volume because I'm going to move home directories from my on-prem filer and my Windows file. I'm going to decommission that. I just want to move that into Google Cloud. So I just need a SMB protocol file service with 50 terabyte of volume, and I want to have it situated in Iowa, right? Like boom, boom, boom. I don't care about all of the intricacies of ONTAP and these types of things. I just need a volume as a service. And so that's where we launched with Cloud Volume Service. And that was, again, a fully managed service, abstracted away all of the bells and whistles and dials that you get with a normal ONTAP installation. And you get, basically, you choose the size of the volume you need, the region where you need it, the performance level that you need, which is going to be gated, say how many megabits per second of gigabyte storage provision do I need? And you can vary that up to an extreme performance level of 4 gigabytes per second, 4.5 gigabytes per second, right? So 30 gigabits per second plus. And so you do that, right? What protocol do I need? Do I need SMB? Do I need NFS 3, NFS 4.1, or do I want all of them? So you those are your 4 basic dials that you get, and then you start, and then click and go. So we started with Cloud Volume Service in, I think, 2 regions, and we grew to 14 regions globally where this fully managed service was available. And that's how we transitioned from not having only CVO, but also having a fully managed service with CVS.
So some of the first guys, if you've been around or watched my content for a few years now, some of the first 7 YouTube videos that I really ever made, like professionally produced, was a series on Google Cloud CVS. You can still find those on my channel if you search for them. They're still out there. And there were always a couple of things that stood out to me about the way that I always kind of applauded Google for the way that they implemented things. One of them being sort of the universal VPC approach, one VPC for all the things, and not having to do separate areas per region. The second was the premium network backbone. Yeah. The ability, and we've now seen the other cloud providers offer something similar as they've sort of led the way on that. But Google did have a big advantage in the beginning that, frankly, I think they undersold, or I think that was a big differentiator for them, was that premium network where your data was private and it never had to go to the internet to go from.
That's a great point, and I don't, like you said. I mean, you have a very strong network background, but when Google was the first hyperscaler that owned its own fiber because it started out as that search engine, and one of the reasons, I mean, they were later to the cloud infrastructure as a service game, but they were very early to the cloud with YouTube, with Gmail, with search, obviously, as being the predominant thing that drove all of this fiber investment. And so now, if you're a Google Cloud customer, you're taking advantage of all of the billions of dollars that they've invested in their global network. And you can do things like, ingress in one region and egress in a secondary region that can ultimately give you a lot lower latency for delivery of your content, and a lot lower costs.
Yeah, the last thing I'll throw in there, I think it was the 7th video that I made, was the dynamic service level adjustment, meaning the ability to, the more volumes that you add, it would start to split the load out evenly across all of the volumes as you mount them up. And I've got a video out there where I'm demoing this with FIO runs and just showing you as I'm adding more and more, you can see it start to level out. So even regardless of what performance level you've selected, the more times you mount it, it evenly distributes that available bandwidth across all of those mounts. And it's absolutely, I still think it's sorcery. I don't know exactly how we're doing that or they're doing that. I'm just kidding. I know how we're doing it, but it still really impresses me. I think between all of the different services, I've always had a bit of a personal affinity for the way that Google Cloud implemented it, from the way that it was natively integrated into the partner solutions through the marketplace. I always thought that was really elegantly done. The way you just click, you register for it and it just shows up, and now all of a sudden I get an NFS mount or an SMB share. And it's very, very, very simple to use. It always was. And
since that time, they've upgraded their networks to a new network, a new higher capacity network, because we're always moving into the 40 to 100 gigabit per second. Anyway, it all at the regional level. They've been upgrading, and we've been beneficiary of those upgrades.
Yeah,
and so that's really where we got started. And then we started getting more and more customers onboarded, which is great, right? I mean, we had and there's 2 factors. One, a lot of people know NetApp, right? We've got tens of thousands of customers globally and exabytes deployed, and a lot of these customers are moving into the cloud. As we mentioned, some of them want more than one cloud, right? Multi-cloud is about 70 to even 80% of major enterprises are choosing this multi-cloud. And so we already had the first party service in Microsoft, as Microsoft Azure NetApp Files. And then they launched one with Amazon FSx in NetApp, right, as a first party service. Right. And the discussion with Google had progressed, and the proof points had progressed, and the integration had progressed, and the familiarity amongst the field customers and sellers had progressed to the point that we're like, hey, we want to have this as a first party service.
I definitely felt the industry as a whole take a bit of an evolutionary step as we were in the middle of doing all of this. And it really hinged, or like, sure, we did ANF and then FSxN in 21. And right after that time, I felt like it was just almost expected I don't want to say commoditized, but there was an expectation that everybody had this. And I know I spent a lot of time looking around at what other non-cloud provider third-party storage solutions were being natively integrated into the cloud, and I could only find one or two. Yeah. And it would be from names you would recognize, but that we won't promote here on the show. But it was very concerning to me that other people are not doing this. Other manufacturers in our caliber are not putting their products and services forward into the cloud in this way. And it made me sort of second guess, I went through those things. Are we doing the right thing? Absolutely, we're doing the right thing. We've rarely been in a position where we've been this far ahead at an industry level as NetApp. There's obviously some milestones you can go back and point to where we were, such as the unified stuff of the early 2000s and some of our integration points of VMware 10 years later. There's certainly milestones there, but to be 3 to 5 years ahead of where all of what our traditional competitors would be is a position I've not ever seen us in. And it's
a unique position.
It is very unique to be in that kind of world, because you're used to everybody kind of having similar stuff, right? You're used to, from a solutions perspective, you're kind of used to, okay, if I choose manufacturer A, B, or C, they're all going to have that thing. It's just going to be called something different, and it may be deployed a different way, but it's going to enable the same kind of thing. No, guys. That does not exist in today's cloud world for what we have brought to market over the last 5 years. It's truly a rah-rah kind of feeling when you really evaluate that and look back at where things have come, where they are today, and hell, frankly, where we're going in the next few years.
You're right in that for anybody else that was, and I think it's a natural progression, right? If you're an on-premises, provider of IT, unless you're just selling something commoditized like a couple of Xeon processors wrapped in your own custom logo. That's very hard to replicate in the cloud, right?
Right.
But if you have something unique, such as a storage OS, which we had developed over the years, I think it was a natural one to make that available in the cloud. And it does take time. It takes 5 years, and it's going to take whomever else that comes next, like that, another 5 years to kind of get to these points where we are. But, all of the things that we're doing are ultimately in favor of the enterprise, because one of the knocks that you get when you move into the cloud, if you're just, going, it's like, okay, if I want to build a full container based application, and then I'm replicating everything 3 times, I'm replicating my persistent disk, my compute instance 3 times, and I have, a chaos monkey that's sitting there knocking my instances out. That's wonderful, right? And so if you're building a brand new application from scratch, take advantage of Anthos, Kubernetes, and everything, because it's a wonderful architecture for fault resilient scalability and portability. However, let's look at 20, 30 years of invested IT in the data center. Well, it's really 40 years, right? Mainframes and all that are still running our core businesses. So when you get to this long tail, not long tail, even like the heart of what's sitting in data centers today, you can't just snap your fingers and then have that re-architected. So you're going to need the same level of enterprise data management capabilities that you have on-prem inside of your hyperscaler. And that's why hyperscalers came to NetApp and said, hey, we want to have these capabilities with ONTAP. You've led the industry for years. We want you to bring those into us. And we responded.
Yeah, it's definitely very interesting to see how you make a good point there. I recently went into Switch, one of the biggest data centers in the world, here in Vegas. They are the hub of the Southwest when it comes to connectivity. They are like the hub of any sort of hosted, whatever you call it, co-location, specifically for Vegas, but also for other places, around the world. The amount of blinky lights that are still going on in there is very telling of sort of where things are. And it would be premature and ill-natured of us to write that off to go cloud. And I think a lot of people might have the perception that that's what we've been doing over the last few years, but that's not. I think that's a that's a big 30,000 foot view maybe of what the messaging has been as we've tried to push these things to market. But I still see a lot more blinky lights than I expected to see 5 years ago in 5 years, right?
And it's hard.
I don't think it's going anywhere.
It's not. I mean,
it's
you're going to
staying
have a
around.
balance, right? I mean, it's going to be,
That's
it's not,
the key.
It's going to be a balance of on-prem and in the cloud. And we're still relatively in the early stages of it, right? And so there's going to be plenty of opportunity for practitioners and vendors to supply this hybrid world. So if you think about NetApp, we believe in a hybrid world, but we're going to be in the cloud because for many of our customers, that's where they want to run net new workloads, and that's where they want to start decommissioning some data centers and move them there. We're going to be there. For on-prem, we're going to be there. We're going to support them, meet our customers where they are, as we talked about earlier. That's the most important thing for somebody to support them along their life cycle.
Well, I want to transition a little bit here, Jeff, to why we're doing this in the first place, and sort of tee you up. I want to pull your couple 3 slides you've got up here on the screen as well, and sort of pull your string and let you give us the messaging around what the latest announcement was a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It was around Google Cloud NetApp Volumes.
That's right, GCNV. GC, Google Cloud NetApp Volumes, but we'll shorten it to NetApp Volumes today.
There you go.
Save some syllables. So NetApp Volumes. So as I mentioned, when we started with our Cloud Volume service, we built that up and landed many enterprise customers. You can go look online. Some of them, OpenText, McKesson, and others that have done stories with us. We did a presentation at Next with Cardinal Health, and these are large enterprises where if you don't have a highly resilient file system, bad things can happen, right? Like the right pharmaceutical doesn't get delivered at the right time, right, or a truck doesn't get dispatched that has carrying precious cargo, right? So these are mission critical applications. And so Google, in full disclosure, it's no secret. As you mentioned, right, we had the first two. And our we'd like to say that the Google partnership started, decades ago, and that's because our CEO George Kurian is the twin brother of Google Cloud CEO Thomas Kurian. So it was nice to have that there, but that didn't give Google any unfair head start. But it goes to show that the level of partnership that we're in, because as Google Cloud sees its growth, it's the smallest of the 3, but they're growing very fast. They needed an enterprise file system supported. So they took what was our Cloud Volume service and then integrated into their control plane. And now we're offering it as a fully managed first party, delivered and supported by Google Cloud. So Cloud Volume service is now been changed, and as it's been integrated into Google Cloud, is calling it NetApp Volumes. But many of the attributes of the service are the same. And a few kind of key points that Google likes to talk about here is that it's fully managed. So goes along with the Google Cloud's focus on offering fully managed service, that there's no infrastructure for you to configure. And you have a Google Cloud experience. And so if you're in your Cloud Console, you have GCS for your object storage, you have your persistent disk for your block storage, and you'll see, along with the other services, Google Cloud NetApp Volumes, or GCNV, right there as well, where you can go, you can click the volume, click the region, click the protocol, click the performance tier, and go, and it spins it up in seconds, right?
Yeah.
And then it's a fully managed service.
That's what you just did, right there is the key takeaway. Like what you just described, to do that on-prem is a 6-month process.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
In most cases, if not longer. If you've got extreme change controls and a very, very, very large organization, it can take 12 months sometimes just to introduce a new storage system, right? Or a new file system on an existing sort of foundation.
Yep.
But the ability to do something in 30 seconds that has taken traditionally 6 months has been sort of my mantra of acceptable cloud storage. Mm-hmm. And I can go and even whether it was CVS or ANF or FSX or now NetApp Volumes, like the ability to go in and create a net new volume in the sky, however that gets done, and get it attached, mounted, exported to a workload, because I like to talk in workloads now,
Right.
not pieces of infrastructure. To get it attached to a running workload and stood up and serving files in 30 minutes, crazy talk. Like, that is unbelievable that we can do that now, when 10 years ago, just 10 years ago, it was an entire process. You would have to go, as a developer, you would have to go stand in the bread line outside of IT. Please, may I have another volume? You would have to beg and plead your IT staff to give you resources. Now you can literally just go spin it up yourself in 30 minutes. That's crazy to me that we're in, and it's normalized. Like, we're at this point where this is expected behavior by IT practitioners and by developers. And I love that we're at this point where we can deliver that. Is the kind of the point I wanted to get across.
And we can deliver it without and for the benefit of the Google Cloud practitioners out there that aren't familiar with NetApp, they don't have to know anything about NetApp. They don't have to take any courses. They don't. Literally, you go into that thing. You're just choosing the protocol, the volume size, the performance, and where you want it, and you're going. And so all that, the difficulty is abstracted away. But what you do is you get all the benefit of these data management capabilities, like, the scheduled snapshot. So you have direct snapshot scheduler right there in your console. You can also do volume clones. So if you wanted to take a test, dev, and prod copy of a database, and you said, okay, well, this is a 4 terabyte database. How do I create replicas of this from my dev to test and prod? You could take hours, like if you were literally standing up volumes or creating instances and copy these files. But with volume clones, you're just cloning that, and in seconds have these direct copies of that your other staging environments and test environments can run with. So, and that's great. And of course, we also have, and this is a very cool feature that a lot of our customers, probably about 30 to 40% of all of the enterprises that come in to use NetApp inside of Google use, and it's something called cross-region replication. Yeah. And what that means is, if you have your primary production environment in Iowa and you want to have that secondary location, then you literally, again, in a couple clicks, you say, okay, I want to replicate this volume to this destination, and you have your schedule and you go. And so every 5 minutes, all the diffs are replicated over. So if for some reason you have a regional outage, or you need to take that offline for any reason, in the second region, you have, a copy that you can flip over into production. And that is for compliance use cases. We see a lot of compliance requirements coming out that want that physical separation. And so you get that right in your storage layer without having to write that in your application layer. It just makes it easy.
Yeah. And guys, this isn't something new that we just came up with last week or a couple weeks ago. Like, I literally have a video going over step by step how to do cross-region replication from like 2020. This has been around for years at this point. Yeah. This is one of those things that we've been working on perfecting and improving for years at this point. And to see it now trickle into this new product called Google Cloud NetApp Volumes is just awesome. It's just an evolutionary step. This isn't like new stuff. It's still the flex and snap words that you know and love. If you're an on-prem customer for decades, it's still on tap under the covers. It's still a lot of the functionality underneath. The language and the GUI and the API is still on tap, flex and snap functionality under the cover. So being able to do flex clones, very space efficient flex clones, being able to do the replication cross region, snap mirror. It's actually, that's the stuff that's going on underneath the covers. But the ability to present it in an abstracted way, in a meta way above that storage management command line way is a big deal. And to be able to take snapshots and clone those into zero space clones that will do all of that. There's all of the stuff. If you're a seasoned NetApp admin, you will recognize a lot of these activities for what they are. But for those of you that have never sat down at a NetApp command line, or never logged into System Manager or managed a NetApp system, please know, trust, and understand that this is stuff that we've been doing for at least 2 decades now. We are the godfathers of NAS. We absolutely know how to do this stuff the right way, and you can trust us in the sense of how we're bringing this stuff to and exposing it to your workloads. It's stuff that we've been doing on-prem for applications for decades now. So, sorry, I just want to throw that in there.
That's absolutely critical point. And so we started this in 14 regions that are available today. You can go directly in your Google Cloud Console, and you'll see those regions listed. But we are going to be rolling out into all of the Google regions. So that is going to be something that will happen in the near future. So we're going.
If people wanted to play with it, where would you recommend they start today?
Everybody seems to go to Iowa if you're in the North America, right? In Central One.
What's going on in Iowa, man? There's a lot of stuff going on.
I don't know.
Between Iowa, Kansas, there's a lot of stuff going on in the middle of the country. Is there something out there besides corn?
There's a lot of real estate. That's for sure.
There's a lot of room.
There's a lot of room. That's right.
Yeah.
And so we have just kind of like to look at some of the key metrics here about what we're doing. So we have standard, premium, and GA. As I mentioned, extreme, which would be useful for running databases if it's you have a high performance SAP environment, you want to run that on extreme, or maybe you want to connect it into Google Cloud VMware Engine for a high throughput capability. You might want to put it on extreme. And of course, you have different prices for each. So extreme's like 39 cents per gigabyte. But the cool thing is you can move from extreme to premium to extreme dynamically. So on Monday, you might need to do a big database backup or run a bunch of queries or whatever you're going to do. That is going to be 39 cents. And then on Wednesday, you might say, hey, we're going to, we don't want to delete the data, but we want to tier this performance down because we don't need to have it as high throughput. You can tier that down and go back up. And then you can expand the volume and resize that volume on demand. And so if you need a 1 terabyte volume or you need a 100 terabyte volume, you resize those in literally if you go into your Explorer and you're looking at it, once you issue that command, it'll say, oh yeah, 100 terabytes free, right? So it happens instantly.
I want to repeat something as well, if I can jump in on you, that I was describing earlier. But now that this is up on the screen, I think people might be able to understand it a little bit better. Because you really have to do some math here, guys. It might be best for you to have one standard volume. But if you look at that, that's going to run you about 20 cents per gigabyte, right? And you're going to get lower amounts of throughput. So you could if you had 4 different workloads and you needed 4 different volumes, one for each of those workloads, you could argue that it would be more cost effective and more performant to have a single extreme volume and mount that to the 4 different work machines, VMs or workloads that you have, because here's why. One of the things that makes Google Cloud unique from a technical level is that bandwidth that you have available is dynamically load balanced across all of those workloads that you mount it to. I'm going to say that one more time. When you mount a volume to multiple workloads, multiple VMs, it dynamically splits. So let's say I have a single extreme volume and I mount it to the first workload, I'm going to get that entire 128. If I mount it to the second workload, each of them are going to get 64. If I mount it to 4 of them, each of them are going to get 32. Do you see where I'm going with this? So if you do maths this out, most people for typical workloads and stuff would just go straight to standard to try to stand things up. My argument is that you could probably be more cost effective and get more performance by spanning one larger extreme volume. And this is one of the things that really makes Google Cloud unique, and one of the things I really harp on, not to mention the fact that they've got the single VPC experience, not to mention the fact that they've got the premium network backbone as they do it, cross-region replication, all of that stuff sort of natively built into the GUI and the API there. But always hang on to those couple of things because the way that they split bandwidth across workloads is unique, still unique to them.
It's including the bandwidth, you're getting, of course, your IOPS, you're getting very high IOPS. And then depending on the protocol you need, one of the things that Google leans on NetApp for is our SMB or Windows protocol, which is a NetApp technology. So we're not throwing some open source Samba protocol and calling it a Windows file share, right? No, this is a mission critical Windows protocol that is ours and very high performance. And so if you need a Windows file share in Google Cloud, NetApp Volumes is a way to go. It's the only solution inside of Google Cloud to provide a fully managed Windows environment. So that's very key.
When we were first standing these up, guys, there was a little bit of a cry for help from the cloud providers. Not to throw them under the bus, but like Google didn't know how to do SMB. Yeah. They were great at NFS. They're Linux guys, Kubernetes guys. They knew how to do NFS. They didn't really understand SMB. So I could say the same thing for Azure. Windows doesn't have any idea how to do NFS. They know how to do SMB. They got that under control, right? But so there was this. So who do we call? NetApp, right? NetApp knows how to do both really well. So we helped Azure with NFS and we helped Google Cloud with SMB, and we helped to literally write some of that code and engineer some of those underlying systems and SDEs and things like that. And that's how a lot of these services are delivered. So file store in Google Cloud, you'll find varying opinions on it. But I think you'll find a very stable performant experience with Google Cloud NetApp Volumes, whether it's SMB or NFS or both. That's the thing. Right. You don't have to choose. You can have both.
Multi-protocol, dual protocol at the same time. And that we see a lot of demand for that as we get to some of these older data center applications they want to move. Some are going to still require Windows protocol. Some of them will require Linux, and some will require both simultaneously. So
absolutely.
That's the
if you want a real world example, end users could drop CSVs into a file share that was then imported to a database that was mounted over an NFS mount to a Linux server running a database. That kind of stuff happens every day. That's how IT works, right? So there is definitely a use case out there for being able to share a volume or a destination, both NFS and SMB. And it could be for end user access. It could be for server access. Now, is that a right way to architect it? No. But I'm saying that those kinds of things happen. Those kinds of things exist today.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting going to say is the right way to architect it and know what those things happen. I mean, there are a lot of, I was talking to a hospital recently, and they're like, okay, we have hundreds of file shares of hundreds of application servers that they acquired through so many acquisitions, and they can't even trace who's using them. And so they basically turn one off and they wait for the help desk for a week to see if anybody can log. And they know that, I mean, that's the real world of IT that's out there. And so, as you migrate into the cloud, you need to have the belt and suspenders approach to select a platform that can just support your corner cases, because it's those corner cases that can come back and really bite you.
So you're checking all the boxes. You've got, if you can go back with that one slide real quick. I had one question I wanted to hit there at the end. So data protection, I think, is something we haven't talked about enough. I don't think we talk about data protection enough as far as cloud-based workloads go, just in general. But I think a lot of people write off cloud storage as an archive tier or an endpoint for their backups to land in. Maybe instead of Iron Mountain, it's an alternative. And I would argue it's the other way around. You have to think it's workloads that you're running in the cloud. They need to be backed up just like tier 1 applications need to be backed up on-prem.
Right.
These things need to be as part of your processes. So as people evaluate, should I go SaaS? Should I go cloud native? Should I build it DIY, bring my own? There are different varying levels of risk. There are different varying levels of things that you need to take care of. The good news is, if you're using Google Cloud NetApp Volumes or our other services that are across the other cloud providers, all of this stuff is built in natively to ONTAP. Your ability to do snapshots, to clone off of those, to make cross-region replication relationships it can replicate every 5 minutes if you want it to, and to take true full backups, not just snapshots, but incremental backups to a different destination, a different volume in a different region. That is all possible with this. I wanted to call attention to that because I don't feel like data protection gets its due for how important it is to be included as a part of these conversations.
Yeah, and on that note, we've been doing this for years, and we understand snapshot, but it's amazing how many practitioners don't really understand the power of snapshots in helping in specific situations, right? Because we're all doing, the type of snapshot that takes very little space is tracking all the changes, right? And so if I need to restore 10 terabytes of data, you're not copying back 10 terabytes of data. You're doing an instant restoration of you're undoing the changes that were done in that window that you wanted to reverse out of. And an example of that would be ransomware. I want to revert from what's happened in the last 30 minutes to an hour ago when I know I had a good snapshot of that data. And you can literally do that without having to go through massive backup and restoration applications. You can recover a file system in the case of these types of crypto type of things, which Google really likes about our particular platform.
Can't imagine why.
Yeah, right. I know. Oh boy,
guys, for the record, I was using this stuff in the late 2000s in a very large public healthcare company. This stuff has been around for ages, and it's fundamental to NetApp. And it's anybody that's managed systems understands snapshots to snap mirrors to snap vaults, fan outs and cascades, and different ways you can architect those. It is very easy to build a stable, protected environment with our technology. If it's like I said, there's a lot of flex and snap words that you have to build the vocabulary around, but once you get it, once it clicks, it works just like an on-prem storage controller. It's beautiful. And
the benefit of that is, like, if you talk about file, like you said, you've been doing this for 20 plus years. File systems in the cloud are relatively new. At first it was all IaaS. It was your virtual machines, your persistent disk, right? And your object storage. So those are the three constructs that, built the cloud. And now, now we're getting in some later stage applications to migrate. The fastest growing technology for storage in cloud, this is IDC, is file storage. So file storage
is having a bit of a renaissance.
It's having a bit of a renaissance, right? Because now if I can abstract away all of my persistence for my data onto a shared file storage that is then backed up and protected, all of a sudden my instances can become much more ephemeral. And I can leverage, whether you wanted to leverage these preemptible instances for very low cost, or whether you just want to make your application more robust by moving all of that storage off onto a shared volume that then you back up. It just gives you a cleaner way to manage that application. And
I also, just keep it simple, I can attach a fiber channel LUN to a container running in, a GKE instance.
Yeah. You need
that's really the last 10 years of containerization and modernization of applications top down, I think, is what has driven this movement to as Docker and other container technologies have evolved and matured, and we've seen the enterprise, who are typically always kind of laggards behind where the industry is, as they've started adopting some of these technologies and gone through the refactoring of their applications, or full swing moved to a SaaS version that needs NFS and SMB mounts, mostly NFS if you're doing Linux-based containers. As we've seen those technologies come to market and evolve and the enterprise adopt them, it's hockey sticked. The adoption of file storage has hockey sticked to a level that, frankly, I didn't see coming. Like, that was a blind spot for me. It makes sense now that I think about it. Yeah. So there's a lot of underlying reasons of why it has gone that way, and it's really driven by technologies and people's adoption of it.
And obviously container is where new workloads are getting started, but if you look at where most workloads reside today, it's on vSphere, right? The existing workloads in the enterprise are on vSphere. And that's why you've seen the hyperscalers come and invest in VMware services for customers to migrate out of their data centers into the cloud. So I know it makes it a little like, why would I go VMware from on-prem in the cloud? Well, it's because you might not have all the people to refactor into cloud native. And so it just gives you that easy on-ramp to say,
people
all right,
are very comfortable, Jeff, with their virtualized environments. And as a
Yeah,
former admin, I'm very hesitant to just rip all the cables out of the back of something and tear it all down just because Jeff Tudor showed up at my doorstep and said, hey, to the cloud. And now your CIO's going, yeah, to the cloud. And you're like, no, hang on. I spent 10 years building this. Like, everything's fine. I understand the hesitancy more than most about sort of ripping and replacing everything and just, send it to the cloud in a whimsical kind of way, just in some flight of fancy. But yeah, to your point, we've gotten to this world now where not only do we have NetApp storage in each of the 3 cloud providers, we now have VMware, managed VMware solutions, almost co-location of VMware into these 3 cloud providers. Ooh, that sounds like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in the making, right?
Yeah.
Because what has been amazing about having NetApp storage and VMware on-prem, NFS data stores.
Mm-hmm.
And now, yes, all 3 cloud providers have the ability, whether it's VMC in AWS, whether it's AVS in Azure, or whether it is GCVE in Google Cloud, you can mount NFS data stores and get all the ONTAP goodness that you've gotten on-prem for 10, 15 years now. Now you can get that in the cloud as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Beautiful.
drop the mic a little bit, right? But if you look at the way that when the hyperscalers started their journey with VMware, obviously they're doing in the hyper-converged instances, which are going to have your compute cores and your memory and your SSDs full of storage, and then you just scale these out. Of course, you're scaling your compute and your storage simultaneously, and so it's 65% is what the numbers typically say are storage-heavy workloads. Which means if you're running everything on these vSAN nodes, then you're going to have to buy a lot of nodes just to get the storage, and you're going to be stranding a lot of compute instances, and you're going to be paying for licenses you don't need. It's going to be very costly. So what if I could take my storage, my data stores, put those on a file system, NFS data store, as you mentioned, and then just scale my compute nodes as I need them.
Yeah. And it's really the movement of, we've seen disaggregated storage used as a marketing buzzy phrase over the last couple of years. And that's really where that's coming from, is like, we went through the whole hyper-converged movement. Okay, that suffered a lot of the same things with the side effects of linear scale. I'll leave it at that. And then now we've with VMware, also in sort of in that hyper converged sort of conversation, we're starting to see, like, that's why the 8 times out of 10 you're going to need probably 8 to 10x more storage than you will compute with a VMware environment, because some of those VMs can get so large, right? And I think the ability now that we have NFS data stores. By the way, did you know that if you hook it up properly, you can just vMotion between the cloud and your on-prem?
Cool.
That's real. That it's a real thing. As long as you've got the plumbing in place like that, you can do that. So we have now turned the cloud into a colo facility. And that's the way I describe it to my on-prem customers when I talk to them. Is I said, do you understand that you can completely shut that down over there now? And you don't need to pay that $1 million a year to rent floor tiles? That you can now repurpose those funds to that. And oh, by the way, to migrate, all you got to do is snap mirror all the data and vMotion all the VMs once you get your pipe stood up. And you should see once they get it and that click happens, it's amazing, because the bill from that pays and then some pays for the cloud stuff. And they end up with this consolidation story that's beautiful.
And the hyperscalers would never set out to become VMware hosters. Let's be clear about that.
Hard truth.
But again, the easy stuff is migrated. Let's just face it, right? The easy cloud stuff is migrated. The hard stuff is what's left behind, and the hard stuff mostly is running in vSphere, and they're big honking databases with high SLAs, and they need a very sophisticated file system approach to it. So anyway, making that easier. And so the hyperscalers motion is, all right, we support VMware for a lift and transform. So we're going to lift. Once it's moving there, then thinking about how they could transform. I mean, companies would prefer not to pay another VMware vSphere license if they had to. but it's operational. Like you said, I don't want to go undo this application. This is mission critical for my hospital. I don't, so if it's between like shutting that down or continue to pay another license, I'll do that. Anyway, so once it's there, then you can think about, all right, how do I maybe connect it into this particular cloud native service, or connect it into BigQuery, or connect it into Vertex AI and do some other things once it's sitting there. But first you got to get it there, and VMware is an easy motion to get it there with.
Yeah, and a lot of people start with backups, and a lot of times that's a good way to do it. They'll start by sending their backups up there, like send them there instead of your secondary systems that are sitting in your colo. Or as a tertiary endpoint to that secondary system, just add it. It's a net plus, right, at the end of the day. But then one of those the one in the middle can be kind of eliminated and rerouted. Yeah. And at a certain point, you start whittling away at these pieces of infrastructure. And as you whittle them away, you start asking yourself, do I really need that anymore? Like, not really. But it's a progression. It's not a just rip the cords out of everything and cancel the colo contracts for most people. Like, I've seen some YOLOs like that where and I just go, hang on. But it's worked out for them. But I definitely think it's a step-by-step progression. Guys, we didn't virtualize everything overnight either. It took a solid 5 to 10 years to get to the point where we were comfortable getting everything virtualized. This isn't going to happen overnight either. We're just now getting to the point where one of the storage vendors and manufacturers has ubiquitous storage across the cloud providers. That's where we're at today. Like, it's going to be a while. The next 5 to 10 years the next decade is going to be a lot of fun, because we're going to see a lot of adoption of file storage. We're going to see a lot of the vendor manufacturers move into the cloud. We're going to see a lot of companies refactoring, all of their workloads to operate in the cloud, or at least in a hybrid model. And a lot of it's going to be, that initial first step is going to be VMware. When we were first doing VMware, the first thing we did was P2Vs, physical to virtuals. And you know what it brought along with it? A lot of the bloatware, a lot of the software that the physical servers required to run that we didn't need anymore. So what was the first thing you do after you finish a physical to virtual migration? You start building the new one. You start building the new clean one. So I do see VMware as a bit of a stepping stone. People are going to run their stuff on it for years, right? That's not going away. But I do see it as sort of if I'm making an analogy to the P2V story I just told, people are going to they'll vMotion their VMs up to the cloud, but they're also probably at the same time behind the scenes considering or already working on refactoring the application that runs in that VM to run natively in ECS, EKS, GKE, whatever it might be, as just a native cloud native application. So it's going to be a progression over time. But the good news is we're here. The industry is very early. We are very early. VMware is very early. There's a lot of catching up that the next 3 to 5 years are going to bring as we continue to evolve these services.
Yeah, and to VMware's credit, they've been investing in the cloud as well. So they know that they need to be there, and they're committed to it, and they're now adjusting all of their sales motions and things like that to support that inclusivity of having the cloud as a destination. It might start as a backup and DR location, but then it could move into production. And so they continue to innovate as well, and I'll give them credit for that.
Yeah, definitely. Was there any other, we're getting close on time here. Were there any other slides you wanted to go over here at the end, or was that it?
No, we talked about our VMware. Our major workloads. We didn't touch too much about SAP. But if you are migrating an SAP environment into Google Cloud, certainly talk to us, because we have dozens of customers running SAP for their mission critical workloads.
Are we pursuing a HANA certification, or has that been achieved yet?
We will be pursuing HANA certification. Okay. We have HANA supportability, certainly in EMEA and in Canada. We're going to be working on that in the US, but even if you're running HANA, and even if you happen to be running persistent disk for your HANA, you have to have a shared file, right? That's a different architecture.
Shared file behind the scenes is a whole different beast than the actual system.
Every SAP environment needs it. And that's where landing on us makes sense because of all these data protection, these cross-region replication. So we take that workload, every day. So SAP migrations is another key one. We talked about Windows. We talked about VMware. And so, high performance NFS and Linux file shares that need 4.1. And, we support everything from video game designers to the drug delivery company or the pharmaceutical delivery companies, to drug discovery, to automotive, it's fun when you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, wow, that company that's building that really cool new car, that's on us. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. It's really good stuff. You mentioned gaming as well, but media and entertainment's always been one of our biggest customer verticals.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, we've had DreamWorks is always coming up in our Hi Kate is always doing we're always doing cool stuff with them. So I look at render farms, the way that they're able to capture attendee or audience feedback and viewership and things like that, and do all of that. Like, they're doing a ton in the cloud right now. Some, like, a lot of the stuff that I can't really disclose. And I saw that we did have a question from Sanjay, and I'm sorry we didn't get to it. Can you give more insight on leveraging on-prem cloud hybrid model challenges? Yeah, Sanjay, we could have a whole day-long workshop about the challenges associated with that. The ironic part of it is a lot of it is the same stuff that you would find between colo and, like, sort of core office. Like, it's really about the plumbing and access and permissions and things like that. Those are the big challenges you're going to run into. You're not going to run into any challenges around capacity or performance or any of that kind of stuff. You're going to run into plumbing problems and permissions and access problems. So if you're moving to the cloud, just be ready. Like, it's not like you're working with a finite number of disks anymore where you have to depend on those disks to deliver a certain level of capacity and performance. No, you've kind of got an unlimited slider depending on how big your credit card is or how big your enterprise agreement might be with that cloud provider. You have a bit of level of unlimited resources, and that's both good and could be potentially dangerous. So be careful with that knob. Be careful with that slider, because if you turn it up too high, that's where you get the surprise 6-figure bill from last month and go, let's see. I'm doing a quick scan, see if we had any other good talking points or questions come up. Let's see. Lots of great activity today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. But Jeff, any final closing thoughts from you as far as Google Cloud NetApp Volumes? Is there any sort of things you're excited about for Insight in a month that you guys are going to be sharing?
Sure. Yeah. Google is going to be at Insight. So I definitely recommend anybody that's coming or everybody, please stop by the booth. You'll see it in action. Like, nothing talks better than talking to some of our experts that are product leadership that can walk through any questions and answers there. And definitely we'll be expanding. We'll be launching new features. We've got some really cool things coming up around Gen AI, obviously very much in the news. Obviously a very key workload of Google that we're doing some really cool stuff with. I can't say a lot more about that at this time other than watch this space. And hopefully we'll have me back on the show and we'll be able to talk about that.
Absolutely fantastic. Jeff, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I really appreciate you making time for us and coming on here and telling all of us and the good peoples about Google Cloud NetApp Volumes. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick.
All right. Take care, Jeff. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for tuning in. As a final reminder, make sure that you get into the NetApp Discord. So netappdiscord.com. Please be sure to come and join us there because we're going to be doing some fun stuff coming up in about a month when it is going to be Insight. So yes, if you haven't yet, make your plans. Insight.netapp.com is the place to go to get registered. Check out the agenda. Work through the schedule builder. All of that stuff is now available to registered attendees. So get registered, get your hotel booked, get your flight travel plans booked, all of that stuff, because we are T-minus 1 month away, October 23rd through 25th here at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. And insight.netapp.com is where you want to go to get registered. But yes, for the other 362 days of the year, you want to come hang out with us in Discord and come hang out with us on air here at NetApp On Air. But for Jeff Tudor, my name is Nick Howell. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Shout out to Drew Claybrook in the background for helping me put on the show today. Really appreciate it. But until next time, we will see you guys later.